Okay, so this is our macromolecule video lecture. So when we think about living things, we need to think about how all of the stuff that is on Earth is organized. And you have learned in middle school that all matter is made up of atoms. And then those atoms can form bonds with one another to make molecules. Okay, and so far that's been the story. But now those molecules are going to start interacting with one another to form more complex forms. And that is going to be the macromolecule level. And that's what we're going to learn about today. Why are we learning about these macromolecules? Because as we continue up through the levels of organization, macromolecules are going to build up our organelles. And those organelles are going to build up into cells. And we know that cells are what every living thing is made of. So we're going to start really tiny at first, and then we'll start moving through the rest of the course by looking at higher levels of organization for living things. Okay? One thing that is common with all macromolecules is that they contain carbon, which is absolutely essential to life. And here are our objectives. Make sure you read through them. They should match with what is listed on the lesson for the day. So let's get back to carbon. Why is carbon so awesome? Well, here are some cool characteristics. Carbon has 4 electrons in its outermost shell. And that means there are 4 electrons that are available to form bonds. And it can make a variety of bond types. It can make a single bond. It can make a double bond. It could make 4 single bonds. It could make 2 double bonds. It could make a triple bond. So it's able to bond with a lot of things. It can also bond with itself and many other elements so that it can create big, long chains of things. It can create rings. It can create branching structures. So carbon is just really awesome because of how versatile it is and the number of different structures that it can make. So as carbon-containing structures are being made, we tend to look at what are the key subunits in all of these structures. And a subunit, a fancy word for that, is a monomer. And the word monomer has the prefix mono, which means single. So if you look over to the right here, you'll see that each of those green little ovals is individual and separate. And so those are like the 8 different subunits, okay? They're all single linked, okay? They're not joined together. But a polymer can form, poly meaning many, when 2 or more of those monomers decide to join together. They're going to bond together physically, and that's going to cause them to form a new structure. And what's really important about that is that when we form new structures, we have new functions that arise. So as monomers are individual, they might have one characteristic, but then when they link together and form a polymer, then they're going to develop new characteristics. Linking together and breaking apart are the 2 things that these monomers and polymers are going to do, these structures in our bodies that basically make up all the chemical reactions that allow for living things to be alive. So we want to talk about the difference between hydrolysis and dehydration synthesis. So the prefix hydrolysis, hydro meaning water and lysis meaning break down. So this is a reaction that breaks apart big polymers by adding something. What does the hydro mean again? It means water. So when you add water to a polymer, it's going to break it apart into individual monomer pieces. Whereas dehydration synthesis, if we're going to dehydrate something, that means to remove water. So in this case, we're going to remove water from monomers, right, individual pieces, and it's going to allow us to synthesize, okay, see synthesis here, synthesize or build up bigger polymers. So on the next 2 slides here, I'm going to break it down in a little video. So dehydration synthesis, okay, first check yourself. Are we building up or are we breaking down? We're building up. Okay, so let's take a look at this animation. So here we see 2 separate subunits of sugars. And look at that, they're losing atoms and what they lost was water. And then you saw there was a bridge that was built, okay? In the middle here, we see that this oxygen from one side reached out and formed a bond over here. And that linked these two sugars together to form a polymer, okay? At the same time, when they were losing those atoms, look what we've made. An H and an H and an O. If we add those together, what do we get? H2O, which is water, okay? So water is going to be released. So it's going to be on the product side. And here you can see a chemical reaction. You see the arrow in the middle. Our reactants on this side are glucose and fructose. And then they go through their chemical process. And then what happens is they come out linked together. And now this new thing, with the monomers linked together, is now called sucrose. And we can see that water has been produced as a result. With hydrolysis, it's literally the opposite. So here, you'll see we're starting with one big polymer unit, okay? Everything is connected together, and we're going to push water into the middle, okay? And it's going to allow that polymer to separate into two pieces or two monomers, okay? You could see this down here as well. So you see that we started out with one big unit, okay? That's a polymer here. We have two smaller subunits within it. We add water, and that causes that big polymer to break apart. And so now we have a single unit here and a single unit here. It's essential for you to be able to look at an image or a chemical reaction like this and determine, is it hydrolysis or is it dehydration synthesis? So why are these things important? Because what's building up and breaking down are all of these macromolecules, whether they're made of monomer units or polymer units. And there are four major classes of these that we find in all living things. So the classes are carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. This is a really hard thing to understand, but you just kind of got to do it. You have to memorize this page. You have to be able to say any word on this slide and match the characteristic to the macromolecule. It's one of the hardest things that we're going to work on this year, but we've got a lot of activities meant to help us practice. And memorization is a part of every class, and this is most definitely where you're going to memorize.